Hello and welcome to another in our series of Artist Road interviews. I'm John Hulsey, and today I want you to meet Thomas Paquette. I first met Thomas in 1997 when we were both artists in residence at Yosemite National Park. Since that time, Thomas has shown his work in more than 60 exhibitions, and his art is represented in numerous private, corporate, institutional, and museum collections worldwide. A self-described incorrigible traveler, he roams the world in search of inspiration and subjects for his luminous landscape paintings. In this three-part Skype interview, he shares with us some of his insights and wisdom gained over the course of his long career. We begin our interview today by asking Thomas about what influences led him to take his first steps down the artist's road. We hope you enjoy. So at what point did you decide you were going to put a lot of effort or focus your time on being an artist? Was that in high school or college or what?
I was always doing artwork, and I don't think I had set up a little studio when I was 12 in my room, and I always had a great interest, but kind of in a way, who doesn't when they're young? At one point though, I had a couple of things happen that in a negative way made me become more focused on understanding that I had a strong relationship to art, and that was I can't remember which of these happened first. I think it was playing soccer. I got hit in the eye really hard with the ball, and it broke something in the back of my eyeball. I think everybody's dead who worked on this, and I don't know, but they couldn't operate, or didn't anyway. I don't think they could back then, but they just had to cross their fingers and hope something became disconnected, my optic nerve or the blood supply or something. And for the next, my perception of it was that it was 3 to 4 months, but I think somebody said, no, I think it was only a month and a half or something. But I had to lie on my back and with both eyes covered all the time. I didn't see anything for a lifetime, in a sense. When it was the last day of 6th grade, and all summer I was on my back and not seeing, and it was pretty awful. And so the idea of vision was always, very treasured after that. In fact, when they took the bandages off, because they were so stagnant or whatever, I wasn't using my eyes at all, I had developed glaucoma. So on top of possibly losing the optic nerve, I got glaucoma, and they didn't know if that would go away either. And that took weeks afterward that, gradually things started coming back. And so I always valued eyesight after that, obviously, and, put together with the idea that I was interested in drawing and painting, that it just kind of magnified it. And then one other thing happened. I think shortly after that, probably a year or so, I was a paper boy delivering newspapers, and one particular client or customer had a dog that they had it chained up by the door, but my job was to get the paper inside the door. And this dog was a nasty tempered Springer Spaniel. And it was always a challenge to get around the dog without it ripping my leg off. Well, at one point, probably can't see that, but I have a big scar on my hand from where it literally ripped into my hand, and I could see the guts coming out of my hand. It was frightening, very frightening for me. And I thought for sure I'd just seen some things about gangrene, and anyway, I was convinced that I'd have to have my arm chopped off if I was to survive at all. And the only thought that came to my mind was, oh no, I'll never get to do artwork. That was all that really occurred to me as like a fundamental, it just was a deep-seated fear. Oh no, now I can't do artwork. And so those things in a negative way made me understand that it wasn't ever, I never really had a realization, oh, I think I'm going to consciously pursue art, at that age anyway. But when you get to college, it really becomes a matter of what, as an adult, am I going to do? Am I going to actually get a job, or am I going to try this thing called art? And I went for the second.
That's interesting how basically out of bad experiences, a lot of.
Right. And I value those experiences. I think we all have all kinds of experiences which lead us to where we are and where we're going. And, they can be positive, negative. Mine just happened to be negative in those cases.
So at this point, what would you say most inspires your art? I know that's a really broad generalization, but you paint a lot of landscape. I don't know that you've ever worked on the figure, but it looks like you're mostly, what gets your juices flowing is the light and the landscape.
I find landscape the broadest possible subject matter, and I find that most intriguing. I mean, people who do still lifes, Randy, for instance, doing his jars after jars. I love those paintings, but in a way it becomes kind of limiting in a way that I don't find painting the landscape to be. I mean, the world is big, and the ecology and the environments that shift and change as you travel north, south, east, west, coastal, mountain, alpine. It's just endlessly fascinating to me. And I also have a bit of an environmental streak, I guess, to me, so that it kind of keys into that. But literally and frankly, I'm much more moved in a way. I mean, I find the landscape interesting, possibly important to paint, but it's the painting process that actually is the most inspiring to me. Texture and color and things that really excite me about artwork. And when I go to museums, that can really be inspiring to see how other people manipulate paint and how it just looks edible sometimes.
Because I'm familiar with your paintings, I'm also interested in the unique style of painting that you've developed. You have a very recognizable and interesting way of applying paint and painting the landscape that's different from anybody else's that I've ever seen. And I kind of wonder how that evolved for you and what you're trying to do with the way you apply paint.
I think you hit on the key word right there, which is evolved. I don't think that too much of it was conscious. I mean, the work basically has evolved from the work itself, I think. Although, we're always inspired by other artists when we see work or whatever. And I think, sometimes I'll just recognize as I'm working and just seeing something happen, I'll say, oh, that reminds me of something Klimt might have done, or, but I consciously avoid, getting too much into that. I can recognize it and appreciate it and think, oh, that's kind of cool. Now I know how he felt when he painted that, or what brought him to that point. And then I try to move on. And so literally it does evolve from itself. And I if you could probably put together a recipe of 40 artists that I've been inspired by, and you could do this for any artist, I think. And you would kind of basically come up with an analogous artwork that would look similar to my own work, but by having these 40 artists come together and do little bits. But it's just an evolution, and oftentimes it's just I watch what goes onto the canvas and how it unfolds, and that's where it ends up.